We're going to start the spring. Okay. Now, what is the spring? Like before going to the spring, now we have some other components also enter into the picture. So suppose in the year of 1996, the Java beans enter into the picture to create like lot of components. Okay. Now by using Java beans also they created like number of projects. Okay. Now, to overcome all these things in the year of 1998, the EJB, it's a framework, it's entered into the picture. Okay. Now, by using EJB, we created number of applications, but it's a tightly coupled relation. Okay. Now that to understand that code, the developers is like very struggle. Okay. Now that's why in the year of 2002, the Spring is entered into the picture. Okay, the Spring framework is entered into the picture. Now it's developed by Rod Johnson. Okay, Rod Johnson. Like whenever they the developers are understanding that Spring, like they are habituated to learn that Spring only. Like later that EJB also like it is very easy to learn, but even though like developers are not going back to like to learn the EJB, like they are habituated to learn that Spring. Like why in the sense like the Spring is that much easy to understand. Okay, now here the Spring here, the current framework like the sixth version. Now the Spring is currently learning on the version 6. Okay, now here what is the main objective of a Spring framework? Okay, now what is the main objective? Now within a less time, now we can make an enterprise applications. Okay, now within a less time, now we can create enterprise applications. Okay, now that is a main objective of the Spring framework. Okay, now by using Spring framework within a less time, we can develop enterprise applications. Okay, now what does the mean by the Spring definition? Okay, what's the mean by the Spring definition? Okay, now Spring is a Spring is a non-invasive, okay, non-invasive framework for the purpose of okay developing both okay both now lightweight and loosely coupled applications. Okay, lightweight and loosely coupled applications. Okay, now this is Spring definition. Now Spring is a non-invasive framework for the purpose of developing okay developing both lightweight and loosely coupled applications. Okay, if you observe this definition, some words are a little bit different. Okay, non-invasive. Okay, now the lightweight. Okay, and loosely coupled. Okay, these words are a little bit different. Okay, now a non-invasive and lightweight and loosely coupled application. Now, before going to enter into the topic of Spring Framework, first we need to understand these words. Now, what's the mean by non-invasive? What's the mean by lightweight? And what's the mean by loosely coupled? Okay. Now, before going to know that like lightweight, first we need to know that what is a heavyweight. Okay. Now, before going to know that what is a loosely coupled, first we need to know that what is the tightly coupled. Okay. Now, before going to know that what is a non-invasive. Okay. Now, first we need to understand what is a invasive. Okay, now these things first we need to understand. Okay, now first we'll discuss here heavyweight. Okay, now what does it mean by the heavyweight? Now if you want to create a web application, okay, by using Java. Okay, now if you want to create a web application now by using Java, Now we can use only one technology, that is a servlets and the JSP. Okay. Now by using Java, now we can develop a servlet technology. Okay. Now before Spring we have an EJB, but here if you want to develop the web applications, we are going to use that servlets and JSP. Okay. Now the thing is what here, the servlets. Then here how to create servlet. Okay. Now if you want to create a web application, the servlet is the main application, the main technology to use. Then how we can create a servlet. Okay. For suppose here we have the different types of servlet. Now first one is like a servlet interface we have. Now again, I think like a abstract servlet we have, and again HTTP server. So it's not abstract servlet, it's a generic servlet. Generic servlet, and again HTTP servlet. Okay. Now there are the three types of servlets we have. Now it is an interface, it is abstract class, and it is also abstract class. Okay. Now it is an interface. Now it is an abstract class, and again it is also abstract class. Now if you want to create the servlet, now we have the three ways. By using interface we can create it. By using abstract class we can create it. By using abstract class also we can create it. Okay. Then what is the issue with that? What is the issue with this one? Okay, now for suppose if I want to create a like servlet class, so my servlet. Okay, now for every class is going to be extends or implements with the servlet interface or centric servlet or HTTP servlet. It is a mandatory to use these three things. Okay, anyone. Okay, any one of these three. Now it's a mandate to use. Means now your servlets is a providing implements with a servlet. Okay. Now here it is a class and it is an interface. Okay. Now whenever you provide implements with the interface, now basically in the servlet interface we have the five abstract methods we have. Okay, these five abstract methods, as a developer, you need to provide implementation for the five methods. Okay, five methods is a mandatory to provide implementation, as well as if you want to create a servlet, it's a mandate to provide implementation with the servlet interface. Okay, now here the five methods are simply here. First one init method, and second one like a service method, and again third one destroy method, like a get servlet info, and again get a servlet context. Okay, these the five methods we have. These five methods are unimplemented methods. So now as a developer, whenever you provide implementation, like whenever implement with servlets, now you need to provide implementation for the all these methods. Okay, now it is the first way. Now if I go with like second way, okay, if I go with second way, now here we can use the generic servlet. Okay, the generic servlet. The generic servlet, we need to provide implementation for only the service method. So why in this is the remaining four methods will get implementation automatically. Okay, directly we'll get that implementation. Okay, now the same whatever the five methods we have in the servlet interface, the same five methods are enter into the generic servlet. Why? The generic servlet is the child of servlet interface. Okay, now we have like one more way. Now class my servlet. Okay, it's going to be extends. Okay, it's not here also, it's not a implements, it's extends. Why? In the sense even though it is abstract class, it's a class. That's why the both are classes only. We can use the extends. Okay, now my servlet is extends with like a HTTP servlet. Okay, HTTP servlet. Now whatever the same five methods we have, here also we have the five and extra seven also introduced in the HTTP servlet. The total 12 methods we have. Okay, the 12 methods implementation we need to provide. Okay, now for one class 12 methods implementation we need to provide it. But suppose if I created a 100 child classes. Okay, 100 child classes, 100 into 12 methods. Now totally 1200 methods implementation now we need to provide for each class, for entire application. Okay, even though there is no requirement, you need to provide implementation for these 1200 methods. Okay, now without using, like without requirement of any of these methods, then how I can use? Now, whatever the methods we have the requirement, the methods only we can use. But even if you don't have the requirement, simply you need to provide implementation for these 1200 methods. Okay, now because of the number of methods are increasing, the performance, the lines of code is increasing, the performance is going down. Okay, the performance is going down. Now here, that's why we can say the servlet is a heavyweight application or heavyweight component. Okay, now this servlet technology, okay, now it will force to the programmer, okay, force to the programmer to implement, okay, to implement predefined API. API is like that application programming interface where you have the classes and interfaces. See here, without using this extension like implement servlet interface and extend generic servlet and extend servlet HTTP servlet class. Now, without this class, simply we cannot write a code. Okay, means what? It is a mandatory. That's why it will force to the programmer to implement a predefined APIs. Without this API, simply here we cannot write any code. Okay, that's why the servlet is a heavyweight component. Okay, heavyweight component. Now here, that's why the Spring, okay, the Spring will never force to the programmer, okay, force to the programmer to implement predefined API. ఓకే నా ఈ సర్వ్లెట్ టెక్నాలజీ యూజ్ చేసి మనం ఏంటి మ్యాండటరీగా ఏంటి ఈ ప్రీడిఫైన్ క్లాసెస్ ఇంటర్ఫేసెస్ కంపల్సరీ యూజ్ చేయాలి. ఓకే, అదే యూజర్ డిఫైన్ యూజ్ చేసి మీరు ఇంప్లిమెంట్ సెక్షన్ చేయొచ్చు, అది నో ఇష్యూ. ఓకే, దట్ ఈస్ వి డిఫైన్. బట్ మనకు అవసరం లేకున్నా సరే ఈ ప్రీడిఫైన్ సర్వ్లెట్ ఇంటర్ఫేసెస్ అబ్స్ట్రాక్ట్ క్లాసెస్ మనం ప్రొవైడ్ చేయాలి. Okay, that's why servlet is providing implement force to the programmer to implement a predefined API. But Spring will never force to the programmer to implement a predefined API. Okay, if you want to use that, you can use that user defined. Okay, but the Spring will never ask to the programmer to implement a predefined API like this direction generic servlet and HTTP servlet, all these things. Okay, now here we have different types of frameworks in the market. Okay, now Hibernate, okay, now Spring, now Struts, like JSF. Look, all these frameworks we have. In that, we have invasive frameworks and non-invasive frameworks also we have. Okay, non-invasive also we have. Now, under invasive, simply we have the Struts are invasive frameworks. Okay, now the non-invasive, this is like that Hibernate and the Spring and the Hibernate. All these things are like okay, non-invasive frameworks. Now, here, invasive in the sense what? Whatever that application we did with the tightly coupled applications. Okay, now those are all our invasive frameworks only. Okay, non-invasive in the sense like the same definition. Non-invasive in the sense it will never force to the programmer to implement a predefined API. Okay, now that is a non-invasive. Now, in the case of non-invasive frameworks, now it will never force to the programmer implement a predefined API. Okay, in the Hibernate also we didn't use like any predefined API to provide implementation, all these things. Okay, now what do I mean by the tightly coupled relation? Okay, what does it mean by tightly coupled? Okay, tightly coupled in the sense, for suppose now we have one class that is a test and a class demo we have. Now in the test class we have one method, public void like m1 method we have. Now so I can use welcome to int. Okay. Now without providing like any relation between the test and the demo, then how I can use the m1 method in the demo class? Okay, how I can print okay, the demo logic like m1 method logic into demo class.
By
Okay,
creating object test.
exactly. Now by creating an object, now test t is equal to new test. Okay, now t dot m1 method. For suppose sometimes like the class having some issues. Okay. Now, for suppose the class has some issues in the sense like here this class affected by the demo. అంటే ఇప్పుడు ఈ టెస్ట్ క్లాస్ లో ఏదైనా ఇష్యూ వస్తే now it will affect means like entire demo class also affect. Now the demo is highly dependent on the test class logic. అంతే కదా. ఇప్పుడు టెస్ట్ క్లాస్ కరెక్ట్ గా ఉన్నంతసేపు డెమో క్లాస్ లో మనం ఈజీగా టెస్ట్ క్లాస్ లాజిక్ ఎగ్జిక్యూట్ చేయొచ్చు. కానీ టెస్ట్ క్లాస్‌లో if anything is wrong, simply here automatically the demo class is effect. Means the demo class is a highly depends on the test class. Okay, because of why in the sense like why it is a disturbance in the sense because of object creation. Yes, sir. Now ఈ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ క్రియేట్ చేయడం వల్లనే ఈ డెమో క్లాస్ అనేది highly dependent on test class ఉంది. Okay, but in this case I don't want to create an object. Then how you are going to get this m1? ఓకే. ఇప్పుడు నేను ఆబ్జెక్ట్ క్రియేట్ చేయను అంటే మరి ఈ m1 మెథడ్ ఎవరు ఎగ్జిక్యూట్ చేస్తారు? నౌ ఈ m1 మెథడ్ ఎగ్జిక్యూట్ చేయాలంటే మనకు ఈ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ రిఫరెన్స్ కంపల్సరీ కావాలి. ఓకే. దిస్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ రిఫరెన్స్ వి నీడ్. ఓకే. నౌ ఇన్ ద స్ప్రింగ్ కాన్సెప్ట్ వాట్ ద స్ప్రింగ్ ఈస్ సేయింగ్, you don't worry about like creation of object. I will create it. Okay. Now spring will create an object. You don't worry, just you can mention which class object you want to create it. That's it. Okay, I will provide the object, I will create that object, you don't worry about it. Okay. Now that's why the spring will create the object, we don't need to worry about object. Okay. Now if you're the spring is creating object simply here we are not creating any object, means what there is no, okay, there's no tightly coupled relation with a test and a demo. Now the relation right now it's a loosely coupled relation. Okay, the relation is what? The loosely coupled relation. Okay, now here the spring is providing. Then who will create this object in this like spring, right? Now the point is like a spring IOC container. Okay, the spring IOC container is responsible to create objects. Okay, now within this IOC container we have the two types of containers we have. Okay, the two types of containers we have. Now the first one the bean factory. Okay, the first one bean factory. Second one application context. Okay, now bean factory and application context we have. Okay, now these two containers are responsible to create an object. Okay, now bean factory is also like the both containers are responsible to creating the spring beans object in this is like the spring beans also we can say that. Okay, now what are the objects I'm saying here? The objects also we can call, okay, objects also we can call the spring beans. Okay, the spring beans. Now, what is the purpose of this IOC container? This IOC container will like responsible to injecting one class object into another class by using a dependency injection. ఓకే, బై యూజింగ్ డిపెండెన్సీ ఇంజెక్షన్ అంటే ఏంటి, ఒక క్లాస్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఇంకో క్లాస్ లో మనం యూజ్ చేయొచ్చు. మనం బేసిక్ గా మనం అంతమందుకు కాన్సెప్ట్ చూసాం లైక్ యాజ్ ఏ రిలేషన్ లైక్ దాట్. ఓకే, అలానే ఈ కాన్సెప్ట్ ఇక్కడ ఉంటుంది. Now ఒక క్లాస్ యొక్క ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఇంకో క్లాస్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ లో యూజ్ చేస్తుంది. ఆ కాన్సెప్ట్ ఏంటంటే బై యూజింగ్ ద డిపెండెన్సీ ఇంజెక్షన్. మనకు డిపెండెన్సీ ఇంజెక్షన్ లైక్ టూ టైప్స్ ఉంటాయి, సెటర్ ఇంజెక్షన్ అండ్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ ఇంజెక్షన్. అవి చూద్దాం. Okay, now this spring container, okay, this spring IOC container will maintaining that object life cycle. Okay, what are the object we have, okay, it will take care now till creation of object, until destruction of the object, the entire life cycle is taken care by the spring IOC container only. Okay, this IOC container will create an object. Okay, this object till creation until destruction it will take care. Okay, now this container is using the configuration information, like spring configuration information. Okay, in the configuration we can provide like transactions and hibernate information and database information. Okay, every information we need to provide in the configurations only. Okay, now this spring container is using, okay, configuration, okay, configuration file. Okay, the configuration file, then this configuration file is only responsible to provide all the classes info, like hibernate information, like class information, database information, everything is providing like this configuration file only. Okay, now this configuration file we have the three ways, like we can go with like XML way, okay, we can go with like Java way, we can go with like annotation way. Now these are the three things, now we'll go with, like mostly we can use Java or annotation way. Mostly we can use annotation way to concise the code. Okay, to concise the code. Okay, now by using this IOC container, okay, the objects are more loosely coupled and easier to get. Okay, now we can test that easy way. Okay, the dependencies are like mostly the swapped with each other. Okay, that's the purpose of the spring container. Now what is the difference, why we have the two containers, we have the bean factory and application context? What's the purpose of this bean factory and application context? Okay, the bean factory and application context both are responsible to like creating the spring beans. Now simply we can call it objects. Okay, it will configuring the beans and managing the beans life cycle. Okay, now the bean factory is a lazy one. Okay, now we can use like small applications. Okay, now it cannot support okay, not support for more annotations. Okay, not support for more annotations. That's why that application context, like container we can use like enterprise level. Okay, enterprise level applications we can use it. Okay, it provide like messaging protocols like IIT, like like internalization. Now we can integrate with the Spring AOP also. Like we can integrate the Spring AOP. Now it will support for like all the annotations. Okay, it will support for all the annotations about the Spring scopes. Now we have the different types of scopes we have. Okay, now it will integrate with like all the other frameworks. The Spring is integrating with like all other frameworks, like Spring core we have. The Spring core we can call is IOC container or a dependency injection. Okay, everything is the same, Spring core and IOC container and dependency injection, everything the same. Now we can integrate it with like Spring with the JDBC. Okay, now Spring with the ORM. ORM in the sense like here it can consider like JPA with the Hibernate. Okay, now Spring AOP we have. Okay, now Spring security we have. Okay, now Spring MVC we have. Okay, now like that Spring REST we have. Of all these like that we have around the 20 modules we have. Okay, the 20 modules. Now, if we want to understand these 20 modules, okay, now if you want to understand easily the 20 modules, now without a Spring Core concept, now you cannot understand a single line of code in the other modules. Okay, that's why the everything is depends on the Spring Core only. Okay, that's why the Spring Core is like a most important thing. Now, whatever we started, that is the Spring Core only. Okay, now here if you observe, we call like that objects are moving, like objects are going to be shared, like one object to another object, another object to like, it's called like a dependency injection. Okay, what do you mean by the dependency injection? Okay, the dependency injection is injecting the data into our object into one class to another class. Okay, now the first one is a setter injection. Okay, now second one, constructor injection. Okay, setter injection and constructor injection. Okay, setter injection in the sense like is nothing but simply we can call getter methods and setter methods. Okay, setter methods and getter methods. Okay, constructor in the sense like it's a parameterized constructor. Okay, by using these things simply we can integrate with. Okay, these both are our XML way also we can do that. Okay, in the XML the setter method simply we can use like some property tags. Okay, but the parameter constructor we can use like the tag is a constructor arg tag we can use it. Okay, now it is a property tag. By using property tag we can mention that the setters and the getters method. Okay, now this is about like the simple introduction about like the Spring concept. Okay, now are you clear till now?
Yes, Baba.
Yeah. Now we start like the first example, or otherwise simply we'll discuss tomorrow. Instead of like that.
Okay, Baba.
Example start చేద్దామా లేకపోతే like
Start
tomorrow.
ఒకటి స్టార్ట్ చేద్దాం బావ.
Okay,
సింపుల్
the
చిన్నగా.
basic example we have now. How I'm going to discuss about how the tightly coupled relation is converting a loosely coupled application. Okay, ఇక్కడ టైట్లీ కపుల్డ్ అని చెప్పాను. ఒక టైట్లీ కపుల్డ్ అప్లికేషన్ లూజ్లీ కపుల్డ్ అప్లికేషన్ ఎలా కన్వర్ట్ చేద్దాం. Now we'll discuss that example later. Okay, for that I am going to take like the three files again. Okay, now the first one we have discussed about like a JPA entity class. Here also we have the same class, but here we can call it a Pojo class. Okay, Pojo in the sense like the plain old Java object. Okay, the plain old Java object we have. Yeah, now we have the Pojo class. Okay, and again one more thing, the main client class we have, and again third one, configuration file. Okay, configuration file. Now what is the configuration file in the JPA? Persistence.xml. Now here also we have the configuration file, that is a spring config.xml. Okay, now configuration.xml. Now the client class will be the same, like Pojo class will be the same as like that whatever we created. Now till now in the JPA, the same. The client like employee class is the same. Okay, now in the next the configuration file. Now, how the configuration file in the sense, a configuration file is what XML configuration. Okay, XML in the sense like we can use the tags only. Now here we can use the parent tag, that is a beans tag we have. Beans tag open and beans tag is a close. Okay, now within the beans, now okay, within the beans we need to provide like that it is the accessed information we need to provide okay, that like a formulas. Okay, now within the beans we have the bean tag is there, bean open like a bean close. Okay, now what's the mean by the bean here? Okay, what's the mean by the bean? Okay, bean అంటే ఏంటి అంటే లైక్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్. ఇంతకు చెప్పాను నేను, స్ప్రింగ్ బీన్ అంటే అక్కడ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ అని చెప్పాను. ఇక్కడ చూడండి, స్ప్రింగ్ బీన్స్ అంటే ఆబ్జెక్టే. ఓకే, మనం ఏంటి అంటే టెక్నికల్ గా స్ప్రింగ్ బీన్స్ అంటాం. ఓకే, మనకు ఎన్ని క్లాసెస్ ప్రొవైడ్ చేస్తే అన్ని బీన్స్ ఇక్కడ రాయాలి. ఇక్కడ మనకు ఉంది ఏంటి, ఓన్లీ ఎంప్లాయీ క్లాస్. ఓకే, ఈ ఎంప్లాయీ క్లాస్ కి ఒకటే క్లాస్ కాబట్టి ఒక బీన్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ మనం క్రియేట్ చేయాలి. ఓకే, నా వీ నీడ్ టు ప్రొవైడ్ ద క్లాస్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్. Okay, class is equal to, that is employee class, and again for this employee class we need to provide some ID. Okay, ఏదైనా ఒక ఐడి ఇచ్చేసేయాలి. Now that ID name can be your wish. Okay, now here within this employee class we have some fields, right? The fields values you need to provide by using property tag. Property open, like the property close. Okay, now within the property tag, now name is equal to, first one is what, employee ID, right? emp id. Okay, now what is the value you want to provide it? 123. Okay, now like that emp name, emp salary, all these things we need to provide. Here we have only one way. Okay, next, the client class, the main client class. Okay, now what's the purpose of this client class here? Okay, in the client class only we have some container. The container is getting information, is taking information from the configuration file. It's creating an object. Okay, it's providing an object. See here, how we are going to create, like we'll see that. Spring demo, yes underscore subtract. Okay, now here also if you want to work with like a spring, now we need to add jar files, right? The spring related jar files we need to add it. Okay, now right click, now go to build path, configure build path, and add external jars. Now go to the springs here. Now we have the spring. Now control A and open, apply, and apply and close. Here we're not going to use any database right now. Okay. Now right click on SRC. Now we can get one package. Now com.demo. Okay. Under demo, we need to create like two files. First one is like a employee class. Okay. Employee, and one more class is like client class. We have new client. Okay, now we need to create like a configuration file. Then how we can create configuration file XML? Okay, in the JPA we created by using like meta, hyphen, inf, all these things. But here we don't need it like folder. Directly we can create like under SRC, right click on SRC. Now go to the new, select other, and select XML. The configuration file name is like a spring configure dot XML. Okay, now the file is created. Okay, see here, the file is not inside the package. Okay, it should be outside the package. Okay, if you observe that, like we need to provide that XML configuration, right? Simply I can take from anything. Now see here. Okay, now this is the XXD information. Okay, now here we have the bean class. Okay, now our bean class, employee class present in the com.demo. Now ID I given Satya. Okay, now ID I given Satya. Now see here, what are the properties I want to provide in the employee class? Now observe carefully here. Here I can provide a private int emp id. Now private string emp name, and private int emp salary. Now private string emp address. Okay, now right click, now go to the source, generate garrison status, select all, generate it, and I'm going to provide default, sorry, I'm going to provide like a default constructor. Okay, now I'm going to provide one method. See here, first I'm going to show you like the tightly coupled relation. Now public void display method. Now here syso I want to print a emp id, emp name, emp salary. again emp address. Okay, now observe carefully here. Here we have the main method. Okay, now tell me, in the employee class we have display method, right? Okay, ఈ డిస్ప్లే మెథడ్ అనేది ఎంప్లాయ్ క్లాస్ లో ఉంది. ఈ డిస్ప్లే మెథడ్ అనేది నేను క్లయింట్ క్లాస్ లో ఎగ్జిక్యూట్ చేయాలి. ఓకే, వితౌట్ హ్యావింగ్ ఎనీ రిలేషన్షిప్, హౌ ఐ కెన్ క్రియేట్ ద ఆబ్జెక్ట్, హౌ ఐ కెన్ గెట్ ద డిస్ప్లే మెథడ్?
Yeah. Spring ID.
No, no. This
Hmm.
this method I want to call in the client class.
జనరల్‌గా అయితే ఆబ్జెక్ట్ క్రియేట్ చేస్తాం.
Exactly. That is the normal way. Now I am going to create an object of employee. Now employee emp is equal to new employee. Okay. Now we created object emp dot the display method I'm going to call. Right click, run as Java application. Okay. Now like we got outputs here. 0 null null, 0 null, we are going to get out. Directly we are going to get output. That's okay. ఇప్పుడు అబ్జర్వ్ చేయండి, ఇక్కడ సంథింగ్ లైక్ వెరీ is everything is happened to the employee class, the client class is affecting. Means because of object is I created in the client class. అంటే ఆబ్జెక్ట్ నేను క్రియేట్ చేశాను. For suppose I don't want to create an object, it is created by the Spring Bean with the Spring container. But here the 8th line we are getting error. Okay, ఎందుకు? మనకు ఆబ్జెక్ట్ రిఫరెన్స్ కావాలి. Then who will give this object reference? Okay, who will give this object reference? It's a given by the Spring container, the Spring IOC container. Okay, the first container here we have the Bean factory. Okay, the Bean factory. Now then how we are going to get the Bean factory here? Okay, how we are going to get the Bean factory? Observe carefully here. Now the Bean factory, okay, factory is equal to, okay, new XML Bean factory. Okay, now it is asking the resource object. Okay, it is asking the resource object. If you want to get the resource object, it's a present in the resource class. Resource is equal to new, okay, new class path XML application context. Okay, now class path resource, we need to get it. Okay, now here it is asking the path. Okay, now control shift to import the package. Now spring framework.core.io.resource. ఇక్కడ చూడండి, మరి ఈ బీన్ ఫ్యాక్టరీకి ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ కావాలి. ఎవరి ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్? క్లాస్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ కావాలి. మరి ఎక్కడి నుంచి వస్తుంది? ద క్లాస్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఐ ప్రొవైడ్ ఇన్ ద కాన్ఫిగరేషన్ ఫైల్. హియర్ ఐ ప్రొవైడెడ్ హియర్ ద బీన్, అంటే బీన్ అంటే ఆబ్జెక్ట్ క్లాస్. ఏ క్లాస్కి ఆబ్జెక్ట్ కావాలి? ఎంప్లాయ్ క్లాస్కి ఆబ్జెక్ట్ కావాలి. దానికి ఐడి ఏమి ఇచ్చా? సత్య ఇచ్చాను. ఓకే, నా హియర్ emp name and emp salary also will provide, emp address also will provide, right? Control copy, control V, control S. Go to the client. Now see, now we need to provide the configuration file. Now spelling here spring Varun, now spring config.xml. Now this file I provided to class path resource. Now this file information is going to be stored into the resource. This resource we are passing to the XML Bean factory like constructor. Now this data is going to be finally going to store in the Bean factory. At this time the factory is going to be created an object of employee class. Okay, now already the object is created. Okay, already object is created. I want to get that object. Okay, మనం ఏంటి ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ని గెట్ చేయాలి. ఒక ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఇన్ ద సెన్స్ లైక్ ఇన్ ద స్ప్రింగ్, ఇట్స్ అ బీన్. నౌ ఫ్యాక్టరీ డాట్ గెట్ బీన్ వి హ్యావ్. ఓకే, గెట్ బీన్ మనం గెట్ చేస్తున్నాం, మనం నేమ్ క్రియేట్ చేయట్లేదు, గెట్ చేస్తున్నాం. మరి ఏ క్లాస్ యొక్క బీన్ గెట్ చేయాలి నువ్వు? నౌ హియర్ ఫర్ దిస్ ఎంప్లాయ్ క్లాస్ వీఆర్ గివింగ్ ఐడి, రైట్? సత్య. For the ID of Satya you need to get that object. Now simply here Satya you provided. Okay, the get bean method is return type is object. అంటే ఈ గెట్ బిన్ మెథడ్ ఏం రిటర్న్ చేస్తుంది? అవుట్పుట్ అంటే ఆబ్జెక్ట్ రిటర్న్ చేస్తుంది. కానీ మరి మీకు ఏ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ కావాలి? ఎంప్లాయీ కదా. నా సింప్లీ హియర్ ఎంప్లాయీ emp. Okay, now we get an object, we need to typecast with the get bean with the employee. Now right click, run as Java application. Now here we got the output. Okay, we got output. Now simply here directly we are going to get output. Here we are not creating an object. The Spring is created by for us. ఇక్కడ నేను ఆబ్జెక్ట్ క్రియేట్ చేయలేదు చూడండి. ఓకే, ఇక్కడ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ క్రియేట్ చేయలేను. మరి ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఎక్కడి నుంచి వచ్చింది? నౌ ఇట్స్ గివెన్ బై ద స్ప్రింగ్ బీన్. దట్ స్ప్రింగ్ కంటైనర్ ఇస్ గివెన్. ఓకే, ఈ ఫ్యాక్టరీలో లైక్ స్ప్రింగ్ కంటైనర్ అనేది ఒక ఆబ్జెక్ట్ క్రియేట్ చేసింది. ఒక ఆ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ అంటే ఆ క్లాస్ మనకు ఐడి ఇచ్చాం. బేస్డ్ ఆన్ దిస్ ఐడి ఇట్ ఈస్ గెటింగ్ దట్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్. ఓకే, మరి బేసిక్ ఈ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఇస్తుంది. మరి ఏ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ కావాలి? ఓన్లీ ఎంప్లాయీ ఆబ్జెక్టా, అడ్రస్ ఆబ్జెక్టా, అవన్నీ కావాలి. ఓకే, ఇందులో ఏ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ కావాలని మనం సెలెక్ట్ చేసుకోవాలి. ఎంప్లాయీ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ కావాలి. దెన్ we need to type cache with that employee. We are going to get the display method. Okay, but suppose SYSO I am printing that employee object. అంటే ఏంటి చూడండి, ఈ ఎంప్లాయీ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ లోనే అంత డాటా ఉంది. ఓకే, అంత డాటా ఉంది. రైట్ క్లిక్, run as Java application. Now we got like object address, but we are getting values. Okay, now if you want to get that, I can delete this display method. Simply I can provide the toString method. Go to the source, generate toString method. Okay, now go to the client class. You can remove this one, you can comment this one, Control S, right click, run as Java application. Now we got outputs here. Okay, now here we are not creating an object. Okay, now it is a loosely coupled application. Okay, now it is a loosely coupled application. The Spring is provided. That's it. Now we'll see tomorrow. We can add some other classes. We can get some like a setter injection and constructor injection also will do that. ఇక్కడ మనం ఓన్లీ సెటర్ ఇంజెక్షన్ మాత్రమే చూసాం. కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ ఇంజెక్షన్ ఎలా చూస్తాం అంటే ఇక్కడ చూడండి, ఈ క్లాస్ ఐడి బేస్ చేసుకొని కంటైనర్ ఎలా క్రియేట్ చేస్తుందంటే ఆబ్జెక్ట్. ఓకే, నా ఎంప్లాయీ సత్య ఇస్ ఈక్వల్ టు న్యూ ఎంప్లాయీ ఇలా క్రియేట్ చేస్తుంది ఆబ్జెక్ట్. ఇంటర్నల్ గా ఇలా క్రియేట్ చేస్తుంది. ఓకే, సత్య అనేది ఆబ్జెక్ట్ రిఫరెన్స్ గా యూజ్ చేసుకొని ఇలా ప్రింట్ చేస్తుంది. ఓకే, మరి డాటా ఎలా గెట్ చేస్తుంది అంటే ఈ ప్రాపర్టీ, ఈ నేమ్ అనేది సెట్ ఈఎంపీ ఐడి, గెట్ ఈఎంపీ ఐడి, సెట్ ఈఎంపీ నేమ్, గెట్ ఈఎంపీ నేమ్, సెట్ ఈఎంపీ సాలరీ, గెట్ ఈఎంపీ సాలరీ, సెట్ ఈఎంపీ అడ్రస్, గెట్ ఈఎంపీ అడ్రస్. ఓకే, ఇవి అన్ని సెటర్ మెథడ్స్ అనమాట. ఓకే, ఇట్స్ కన్వర్టింగ్ ఇంటూ గెటర్ మెథడ్స్. ఓకే, డైరెక్ట్లీ we are going to get an object life cycle. Okay, now this is a basic example. We'll see like tomorrow we are going to add some other concept, and we'll go with like constructor injection also. Okay, ఇది సెటర్ ఇంజెక్షన్ అండ్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ ఇంజెక్షన్ ఎలా డాటా యాడ్ చేస్తాం కూడా చూద్దాం. ఓకే, ఐ హోప్ యు ఆర్ క్లియర్.